Very excited indeed, especially as a technology provider. That's where the industry is at. So very excited to mingle and learn, and talk about a topic that we hold dear, and that is the revolution and digitization of the logistics space. Especially in the subsector that we focus on, which is typically the transport logistics market. I think one thing that is completely top of mind consistently is this evolution of the transport being initially, previously years back, being pulled almost into a digitization from their clients. And it's sort of reversed now. We see transporters are really sort of dictating more and more where the technology drive is between themselves and their counterparts and their clients. So one core thing that we see constantly pop up when we do have discussions with our clients is visibility. So how can we share continuous operational visibility to our end client? And how can we empower the driver? What applications do we have for them? In that electrification, obviously, there's a lot of planning that's going to be demanded from the transporter in this, hybrid phase of, how can one plan ahead in terms of charging stations from geographical areas, and in that space we would like to start incorporating how that gets planned for an operator. The first thing you need to do is integrate. So from our perspective, we latch onto the transporter's existing telematics. That positional data feed we use in our operational planning and scheduling. Once that has been established, we can start bringing some artificial intelligence inspired application into the route optimization.
Renko Bergh from Control Fleet, great to have you with us today. Where in the world are you?
Lovely. Well, good to be here, Ben. Thanks. Based in South Africa, Cape Town, and lovely to experience the last part of the year. It's an exciting last quarter ahead.
Yeah, you get into your springtime now, so everyone starts getting really excited about what's to come.
100%.
And of course, Smarter Mobility Africa is just around the corner, so 1st and 2nd of October, and you'll be joining us to speak. Maybe that's a good segue into actually understanding some of the key points and topics that you'd be looking to speak about at the summit.
Yes, very excited indeed. Especially, as a technology provider, that's where the industry is at. So very excited to mingle and learn, and talk about a topic that we hold dear, and that is the revolution and digitization of the logistics space. Especially in the subsector that we focus on, which is typically the transport logistics market. And I'm very excited to meet many players at the conference.
And it seems like fleets have just continued to go through constant transformation, challenges, but also opportunities within that space. So it'd be good perhaps just to touch on some of those key trends that you're seeing at the moment for your clients.
100%. I think one thing that is completely top of mind consistently is this, evolution of the transport being initially, previously years back, being pulled almost into a digitization from their clients. And it's sort of reversed now. We see transporters are really sort of dictating more and more where the technology drive is between themselves and their counterparts and their clients. And I think the momental shift has been that the transport space previously were potentially slightly laggard in their digitization. It's leapfrogged into a scenario where transporters now know how to adopt technology. Their drivers are using technology, and they really are giving that value proposition to their end clients. So one core thing that we see constantly pop up when we do have discussions with our clients is visibility. So how can we share continuous operational visibility to our end client? And how can we empower the driver? What applications do we have for them to empower the operations? Electronic PODs, regulatory requirements in terms of documentation that can become digital. So we really find that the operational environment for transporter in its totality becomes a digital space. And that's super exciting. And it's really leapfrogged in the last couple of years.
And it seems like there's a lot of efficiency drivers at the moment. You have the transition to electric vehicles, new energy vehicles. You have the rise of AI and use cases for AI. And then there are other efficiency areas that I think you work on at Control Fleet as well. So how important is efficiency today? And how do those three topics that I've just touched on impact your world?
Hundreds. And the first thing that we find is there's initially quite a silo approach to the technologies in the transporter's environment. You've got your telematic feeds, you've got your operational systems and multiple of them aside from your accounting package and potentially plugins around that. And operating in silos. So the first thing you need to do is integrate. So from our perspective, we latch onto the transporter's existing telematics. That positional data feed we use in our operational planning and scheduling. Once that has been established, we can start bringing some, artificial intelligence inspired application into the route optimization. That only happens and that can only really add value once you've got those silo project applications integrated. From there, you can create nice automation in terms of feeding your client with updates. From there, you can create digital, overarching reporting, and then get smart on what you do inside the cab. How digital does that become? How do you change your delivery process? How autonomous does it become? But I think the first building block is to break down the silos, get one central place of control, and then you can get quite smart with the automation and machine learning aspects. You can start gradually moving into that space.
Brilliant. So the getting hold of the control, I can imagine that's where Control Fleet has come from. So you're saying you kind of centralize, you integrate all of those different bits of data points, you bring it into one central place.
Exactly.
Brilliant. And then on the topic of electrification, I wonder if that's something that you're having to look at this point in time, or if it's something more on the horizon from your client base.
Definitely on the horizon. What we find and where we hope to play a role is our application is very much transport operational planning focused. And in that electrification, obviously, there's a lot of planning that's going to be demanded from the transporter in this, hybrid phase of, how can one plan ahead in terms of charging stations from geographical areas, and in that space, we would like to start incorporating how that gets planned for an operator. In terms of further operations, I think we'll be client-led in terms of where the client would need Control Fleet to start adding value further into that space. But from an initial phase, it will be planning and how we can improve and help the transporter plan when he starts to look at that infrastructure that they need to manage while going into that hybrid phase of not completely electrification yet, but moving into that. Yeah.
Yeah, you touch on infrastructure there, and I attended a roundtable this week with some of the biggest, users of HGVs and large vehicles. This was actually in the UK, but the big challenge that came up through electrification was around this infrastructure point, because with bigger vehicles, you need bigger batteries, and therefore you need chargers that can provide the right amount of power. And power is the challenging point here, because the grid may not be providing that kind of power. And then you have to spend quite a significant amount on power upgrades in addition to the charging infrastructure. I mean, one charging station that one of the organizations had can charge a 1 megawatt per hour, which is insane. I've only ever heard of sort of 250 kilowatts. So this infrastructure piece, it sounds like it's going to be expensive, or it's going to be quite significant investment from a capex perspective, and therefore installing the right infrastructure in the right places at the right time is going to be even more important. So where might some of the data come into play from what you might be gathering at Control Fleet?
So obviously, and I think depending on the speed of how that becomes relevant in South African space in terms of, infrastructure, where we would either centralize that, or every player would have their own infrastructure player where they only do their own planning according to what their fleet needs are. We would utilize that positional data of where that charging infrastructure would be, so that the operator can do the efficient planning and make sure that they can still deliver as per expectation of the end client. Ultimately, I think from that and thereafter, coming back to the basics of the transport is, can we then still manage the expectation of the delivery times? How does that impact the fact that you now need to potentially have longer, more frequent stops, transition periods? How does that impact your ability to deliver at the time that you always were or expected to? And hence, how does that ripple to the data that you feed your client for updates and prompts? So I think initially there's that core plan, and how do we communicate better and continuously with the end client as we operate as a transporter.
Yeah, and the other point that came up actually around the charging time was the legal driving times that you're allowed, and then if you're having to do the charging as well, does that then get added on as included in the legal time, and therefore would shorten the amount of time that the driver could drive? So it sounds like a whole load of new issues and opportunities to navigate over the next few years.
100%. I think it's greenfield for many of us, and it's exciting how we're going to navigate together. Yeah.
So an organization like Control Fleet, are there any particular products you're procuring at the moment, or any services that you're looking for? And I ask this question knowing that there are many solution providers that attend Smarter Mobility Africa.
Yeah, great question, Ben. So our current focus from an operational perspective is revenue management, planning, scheduling up until invoice. And what we see as obviously a next need is that expense management to get to a full profit and loss reporting ability. And there we are seeing more and more opportunity for integrations and potentially some, merger or acquisition or joint venture opportunities where we partner with best of breed, looking from a maintenance perspective. Or specifically applications focusing on areas of maintenance, fuel, maintenance, tires. And there we find that, playing to our strengths, almost keeping in our lane, but partnering with those that are doing what we don't. And in our current space, that's the maintenance and expense field. And there we see many role players that have got exceptional technology, growing well, where we really can dance well together. So currently we've got a couple of integrations up our sleeve that we'll be launching now in this quarter, and some planned for next year. And we really hope that we can, broaden that network of integration and really keep that single point of control for our clients, where they don't have to feel that they've got this silos again, where they've got best of breeds not integrated. So yeah, that's a big drive for us at the moment.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds like one of the key takeaways from our discussion today is that integration is key. And I think we hear this all the time across transport fleets, but also across the public transport space, that this integration piece is top of mind and something that we need to focus on. So we'll definitely be championing that during Smarter Mobility Africa in just a few weeks' time. But for today, Renko, thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to meeting you in person at the summit.
Thank you, Ben. Very excited.